Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hurley, and today we're talking about the All Ireland hurling semi finals this weekend. Very few games, but games of importance this weekend is Limerick taking on Galway on the Saturday, as well as Clare taking on Kilkenny on the Sunday, obviously trying to gain revenge. And we'll also, because we have time, we'll discuss the Camogie Quarter Finals. Cork, Kilkenny, and Antrim and Tipperary are involved there. And also the last of the underage finals are in action this weekend, as well as Derry face Monaghan in the All Ireland Minor Football Championship final in the Athletic Ground in Armagh. And delighted to be joined once again by Seamus Brady from An Cluiche to discuss the weekend's action. I nearly called you your old name there, but we're still getting used to it. But how have you been over the last few days, Seamus? A good win for Dublin on Sunday anyway. We were both at that game. And the weather wasn't great, but in fairness, good win for Dublin on Sunday. And the Dubs are back anyway, but it's all hurling this weekend.
Yeah, very good win for Dublin, and thanks for having me on again, Matthew. I was the same when the intro music was playing and it has Gaelic Statsman. It was weird to see as well, and the amount of times I've done videos where I've said play on GAA and then realised after, I said the wrong one, and then but there were live streams, so you can't go back. But eventually we'll get used to it, and then saying the old name will sound weird then. At some stage, but like we haven't even had the names changed a month, so we'll get there eventually. But yeah, Sunday was a fantastic result. I mean, I had actually got a nice view down the Davin end, and I could see great view of the pitch, and just Dublin's movement in the second half in particular was what really blew me away. We were just adventurous. We had that bit of zip back in the attack that we didn't have in 2021. We didn't really have it in 2022. That looked like it was back, and it was really thrilling to see Pascal's pace, Costello's pace, Conor O'Callaghan's direct running, and bringing in the likes of Kieran Kilkenny, Jack McCaffrey off the bench. So yeah, like absolutely 10 out of 10, delighted with the performance. And Kerry looking damn good as well. It's teed up to be a very interesting weekend to see can Monaghan or Derry stop those two, because Monaghan and Derry got through it in different circumstances, I would say, than Dublin and Kerry. They didn't set the world alight, but they did get through. And that's why next weekend, it will be very interesting. But obviously, this is the hurling weekend. We're going to talk about the All Ireland hurling semi-finals. Weirdly, this is probably the stage of the year where we're least busy when you think about, the games that we have to cover. I know that we go into them in depth, but when you think about the start of the year and we got the colleges and the O'Byrne Cups and the preseason cups, and then we have the leagues and there's 4 divisions, and then we have the championship and there's, Tailteann Cup going on as well. And then after this, we're straight into the club championships where there's 32 different inter-county championships taking place at the same time. So we get to actually go in depth into these previews and don't have to worry about the 150 other games that we have to cover.
Exactly so, and it definitely is into the hurling weekend. It's a bit of a kind of a indifferent hurling weekend in general, because last season was the same semi-finalists as this season, but we will get onto the hurling in the minute. As always, we'll start the show with the week in the GAA. And to be honest, two main stories. Well, one has been popping up every week nearly on the podcast, and it's taken another turn. And we'll start off with that. The women last weekend with the Camogie and the LGFA, before throwing and during the national anthem, they wore jersey saying hashtag United for Equality. And it caused a bit of a stir online. And as well as that, the 68 men's intercounty captains actually got behind the Ladies Football Association and the Camogie Association in dealing with the player strikes in general as well. And that was a huge step from the likes of David Clifford, James McCarthy, Declan Hannon. All them captains are getting behind this movement, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And it is getting traction now, Seamus. But I asked the question for this weekend in general. We'll get on to the Camogie quarterfinals in a minute, but the Camogie quarterfinals are before the men's semi-finals this weekend in hurling. Do you think the same will happen this weekend? Will they wear the shorts during the warm-up and stuff like that, and then go into the dressing rooms to delay throwing again? And will the men stand with them this weekend? It's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they do whatever it takes to get to the end goal that they want to get to, because the reality is that all the equality, all the measures that they were talking about, that they were striving for, we're now nearly a year and a half later, and we've seen no progress. Like at the start when the merger happened between the two GPAs, with the women's one and the men's one, and they were talking about, equal investment, equal opportunities for all players. And we're, months later, like coming up on 18 months later, no noticeable improvements. And that's why people have to take a stand here. That's why the players have to take a stand here. And that's why it's up to us as well to cover this and make sure that it gets as much coverage as possible, make sure it becomes as big as possible. And that's why they're wearing the t-shirt with the hashtag United for Equality. That's why the men's players getting involved, the men's captains getting involved is hugely significant, because the bigger this gets, the more pressure it puts on the people who can make the changes to make the changes. And one of the stupidest points that I've seen going around is, oh, they shouldn't be doing this during the championship. It's not the right time. Do you know what the point of a protest is? The point of a protest is to make the people who can make the changes. And sadly, quite often, the only way to do that is to make them quite uncomfortable with the current situation. And sitting down before the start of the game, wearing the t-shirts with the hashtag United for Equality across it, that's all very good, because that's drawing attention to it. And I'd be 100% behind them to keep going and actually keep upping what they're doing. Like me and Aaron were kind of throwing around a few ideas, and we were saying it would be, imagine if they just walked off during the game, or imagine if they just, I think, was that even with you that we were talking about it? Imagine just the 42nd minute or something, they just all left the pitch. Or imagine if the referee threw up the ball and they all just didn't play the game, or something that is just bizarre, that would get so much headlines and draw so much attention to it. Because publicity is the way that this issue gets solved, in my opinion. Publicity is the way that more and more pressure then gets put on the people who can do something about it to do something about it. So yeah, I hope that the protests continue this weekend, and I hope that they continue right up until they have achieved their goals.
Exactly. So, and it's really, really important that this happens, isn't it? Because you look at the Camogie Quarter in this weekend more than anything, because the Camogie Quarter Finals, they're in Croke Park. It's a privilege for any Camogie player to play in Croke Park, but it kind of feels weird at this stage to play in Croke Park in a way, because it's the All Ireland Quarter Finals. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for these women in GAHQ to make a stand here, and they'll do it this weekend. I think they'll do it this weekend, and it would be very interesting, as you mentioned there. If the ref threw in the sliotar and then the players just like, to hell with this, we're not playing, we'll walk off the pitch, then that will actually be a stand after that. And yeah, a lot of people are actually complaining to me, saying, why are you posting about this? This is supposed to be GA and this is supposed to be Gaelic in men's and stuff like that. The women have as much right to play Gaelic games as the men do. It's ridiculous. The story you told me a few weeks ago about Vicky Wall paying for a physiotherapist for an All-Ireland champion as well. For Libby Coppinger.
Yeah, she said she knows of other girls that have put their hand in their own pocket to get physio sorted.
And the thing is as well, Libby Coppinger as well, getting in a car from Páirc Uí Chaoimh to drive up to Pierce Stadium in Salthill the same day. And they're not as forward at 24 hours and dual clashes either. There's so many things wrong with the association in not merging whatsoever. And this merger was announced, I'd say, what was it, 2-3 years ago, 2.5 years ago?
It was voted on in December 2020. That's how.
And we're 2022.
Like, let's put this into perspective, right? The last time when this was voted on, COVID was, we were in lockdown. That's how long ago this is. We were in that championship where it was played in front of no crowds. How long ago does that feel?
Feels like an eternity ago. I remember him and people had accounts and stuff like that. We could put up videos and things at that time, and people were getting programs on PDFs. That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago, isn't it? And it's just like, you're absolutely right when you're talking about it. Now they have the opportunity to go to the headquarters of the GAA and make their stand there, and I hope that they do. I really, really hope that they do, because as I was saying to you and as you were saying to me, publicity is the way to turn up the heat and turn up the pressure on the people that can make the changes to make the changes. And anybody saying that, oh, it's the championship, they should just get on with it. No, things need to stop until they make the changes, or they need to be put pressure on them to make the changes. Because if there's no pressure on them, what's the motivation for them to change anything then?
Yeah, exactly. And that is the big
Things
thing about it.
have to either get really, really serious or stop for they're in GAA.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main thing about this, and hopefully the players take a stand this weekend. And one more thing before we crack on with the All Ireland.
What point did I cut off there, Matthew? Just in case I didn't finish the point I was making.
I actually can't remember. I think it was make the changes. I think it was.
I
That,
was just saying that now that they're in GAA HQ, they're in Croke Park, they will have the eyes of the nation on them. This is the time, in my opinion, to bring that protest. Wear the t-shirt, do the sit-down protest, and bring all the publicity on this that you can, in my opinion. Bring all the publicity on this that you can. I'd be interested to watch, to see what they do. And I hope that they draw all the attention to this that they can and keep the protest going until they have achieved their goals. And I think everybody, from me to you to Aaron to anybody who has any sort of a voice in the GAA, should be covering this, because publicity is the way that you turn the pressure up so that the people who can make the changes make the changes. And I sure cannot wait to see the day in which the changes will be made, because I do think it's only a matter of time. There are so many people now pulling in the same direction. I can't wait to see the changes happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, and one more thing before we move on. David Clifford and all them, and I think it was Paul Murphy and the rest of the Kerry panel actually posing a picture with the GFA players. That was brilliant as well. And Clifford is the most marketable player in the GA, and if he's in this movement as well, it's going to rise up the pressure for the GA, and rise up the pressure for the LGFA, the Camogie Association, and it's only right as well for these players, the effort they give. And they should get the publicity. This should get the publicity they deserve. You're absolutely correct in that, and they should get the right outcome, and I'm sure they will in the future. But before we get into the All Ireland semi-finals, there was one incident in the quarterfinals last weekend actually, and it happened on Saturday night after we did the live stream. Brilliant live stream, by the way. Thoroughly enjoyed that on An Cluiche. But watch it if you haven't already. But as well as that, Armagh and Monaghan fans. I don't know did you see this, Seamus, but there was a group of Monaghan fans fighting in the hill, actually throwing punches and things like that. And we go back to this argument again that the GA support is kind of coming into a different sport in general, because you see it loads of times in English football over the past few seasons, in the Premier League especially, but it's kind of creeping into GA now. We've said it over the last few seasons, and when you look at Saturday night, the scenes on Saturday night, shared by Scorpio, by the way, follow him if you haven't already on social media, it kind of begs into question that this sort of culture is coming into the GA, and it's not very nice to see.
I was talking about this with my colleagues in work. Like, I work in Croke Park, and we were talking about it, just shooting the breeze in general. And it's just like, is it getting worse, or do we now see everything that happens? Because I've been to Croke Park, and I was in Croke Park in 2015 for the Dublin Kerry All Ireland final, and I saw a huge scuffle on the hill. But nobody took out their phones to video it, because that just wasn't how things were at the time. And the thing is then immediately everyone wants to video it and put it up, because that's what's going to get attention. And look, I don't blame anybody for it, but I'm just saying that is the culture now. And you are asking, all those lads in the video, I watched it, all those lads in the video, a good portion of them anyway, look like they're about 15. And I don't know about you, Matthew, but when I was 15, I was an idiot. And this is what I mean, is that most 15-year-old lads are a bit rowdy. They haven't really matured yet. And sometimes when they run into another group of lads, they talk a bit of shit to each other, no matter where they are. So am I surprised that if you put a group of 15-year-old lads from Monaghan and a group of 15-year-old lads from Armagh, and then the game ends on penalties with Monaghan winning and Armagh losing for the third time in 4 losses on penalties, that it can then kick over into an argument? Absolutely not. And the one thing is that, again, throwing it back to you, is it that we have seen an escalation in this, Or is it just now that everything is being filmed? Because when you look back in the past at some of the matches and some of the rivalries, like Meath and Cork used to box the head off each other every time they played each other in the 1990s and 1980s. Dublin and Meath, exactly the same. So would you be really surprised if a few of the fans also had a go at each other at the time, but just nobody would have filmed it back then? Do you kind of get what I mean?
Maybe so. I remember actually Kerry and Dublin, that was filmed in the Halo, I think, in the replay. I don't think do you remember that when Kerry and Dublin had a bit of a fist fight in the Hill that time in 2019?
2019, was it?
Yeah.
I didn't see it at the time personally, but again, doesn't surprise me. Like, this is just, if you throw young lads in that just think that they're the toughest man in Ireland, again, and you throw them in with another lad that thinks he's the toughest man in Ireland, and then give them beer, give them alcohol, you know what's going to happen. It's the same reason why fights happen in nightclubs. It's the same reason why fights happen in pubs. People get a few into them. They think they're bulletproof. They start cheering for their team. The guy beside them is cheering for the other team. And maybe if you think that somebody is annoying when you're sober, when you're drunk, you're more likely to tell them to shut up. Then they're more likely to go back at you if they're also drunk. And that's just what I think happened in the Hill. It didn't in terms of, yeah, it was a little scuffle. But compared to fights that happen in soccer, it's not even lacing the boots of fights that happen in soccer. You see them throwing chairs at each other, and the fights, once the fight happens, everybody's in. There was still loads of people in that film, from what I saw anyway, pulling people back, holding people back. Okay, stop. It seemed like there was really just 3 or 4 people who were raring to get at each other, and the rest were just, what's going on here? So in terms of, is it creeping into the GAA? Maybe a tiny bit, but I think as long as the GAA has existed, I think there probably would have been the odd scuffle at a game. It's just now we're in an era, and now we're in a culture where the second a fight happens in any setting, by the way, somebody pulls out their phone. So that's why I think that went up. And by the way, just to clarify, I'm not, by saying that to capture it and share it, I was not having a go at all at the individual that caught it and shared it. It's so many people's instant reaction now to pull out a phone and capture whatever's in front of them.
Just one more question before we get into Limerick and Galway in the All Ireland hurling semi-final. You don't think the GAA is moving into soccer culture at all?
Not as bad as some people think. Not as bad as some people think. Sensationalism is everywhere. People are, and this is the other thing as well. Negativity sells. We love to be like, oh, it's all gone to the dogs, isn't it? Oh, it's not how it used to be. It's trust me, once people from other countries come to Ireland and, you start telling them about the GAA, and once they learn that the fans sit together, there's a real jealousy there from a lot of people that we can sit together. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we can sit together and support different teams and respect the fact that the other person supports different teams. So for anybody who genuinely goes to a game and thinks that they can, mess around with somebody just because they support another team, that's completely unacceptable. But in the grand scheme of things, if you fill a stadium with 82,300 people, you're going to have an idiot. This just, I hate to break it to you, you're going to have a gobshite who's going to try and run his mouth to somebody. And I think that's probably what happened there. But to wrap it up, do I think that we are becoming exactly like it? No. Other sports literally have firms, hooligan firms, where they set up organized formations to fight each other. And they set up times and places where they're going to meet up and fight. That was just, in my opinion, that was just alcohol talking.
Yeah, interesting point, all right. And hopefully we won't see as much fights even caught in camera.
But it didn't happen in the Dublin Mayo game.
That's the thing, yeah. I didn't see much fights even in Dublin Mayo at all. It was a huge crowd, even getting out of the stadium.
Kerry Tyrone as well, no problems.
Yeah. And there was for Monaghan and Armagh. But I suppose it's 2 Ulster counties.
That's what I mean as well. There's another element that actually this is another element that we haven't even spoken about. There's the other element of Armagh and Monaghan are really close to each other. They share a border, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Yeah. So is it, and like I have a few friends from Monaghan who tell me that like a lot of Armagh people would go to Monaghan nightclubs in places like Castleblaney, etc. How do we know that these people didn't know each other? Like, I am just speculating, but like Ireland is a pretty small country. Like, maybe it was a personal issue.
Maybe so. But enough about our rambling about this, and we'll move on to the hurling semi-finals this weekend. And the first one between Limerick and Galway in the All Ireland Senior Hurling Championship semi-final, Saturday at 6 p.m. in Croke Park, live on RT2. And for the first time ever, I think in GA history, it's going to be live at BBC Two Northern Ireland and not Sky Sports. So it's a good move there by the GA to put it on free-to-air British coverage as well, which is absolutely great to see in general. But in terms of the game, Galway losing the Leinster final, obviously, to Kilkenny with that late Cian Buckley goal. I know you were there, Seamus, and it was a mad set of events that happened there. And then obviously they beat Tipperary in a bit of a weird enough game. Like, they were much better than Tipperary, but only beat them by 2 points in the All Ireland quarter final. Limerick, obviously, statistically, they'd be out of the 4 teams left. They've been the worst team in it, defensively and offensively. But they're still there. They're still going for 4 in a row, and they're still alive and kicking. So in general, this should be an interesting game to see if Limerick can actually hit form in this game, or are they still going to be kind of on the beach a small bit, and can Galway capitalise?
This will be a very interesting game. Obviously, we're at the same stage as we were this time last year, same Final Four. It's really, really hard to know what's going to happen in this game because, like, part of me thinks, look, Limerick are actually almost out of the woods in a sense. You've got the 100 miles an hour of the Munster Championship. Well, let's be honest, Limerick have had a target on their back from day one. Every single Munster team has wanted nothing more than to be the team to beat Limerick. And now that they've got out of Munster, as champions, by the way, they're in the All Ireland semi-final once again. And they've had a rest. They've had time to rest up. And going into this Galway game now in the All Ireland semi-final, it's a Galway team that they beat last year in the All Ireland semi-final. Yes, it was closer than a lot of people at the time thought it was going to be, particularly when Brian Concannon hit the back of the net. Like, the stadium really, it got interesting when Brian Concannon hit the back of the net. It was real like, whoa, okay, this is the game now. I didn't expect that to happen. But yeah, the main question for me about Limerick compared to last year is that they are weaker in defence this time round. There's no doubt about it in terms of who the personnel that they will be playing with. Sean Finn, in my opinion, is the prototype cornerback. If you were to design a cornerback, you would design Sean Finn. Powerful, tight, ferocious, fantastic defender. And him being missing is crucial because he would be just tailor-made for Conor Whelan. So him being gone, big loss. Declan Hannon being gone as well, huge loss. Like, All Ireland winning captain, he's lifted Liam McCarthy 4 times for them. And who slots in for him? Personally, I think it will either be one of 2 things. They'll definitely put Mike Casey to fullback. I'd be pretty confident about that. And Richie English back into the corner. And then they'll either put Dan Morrissey at 6 or they'll put Kyle Hayes at 6. And whichever one of the 2 that they put at 6, they'll put the other one at 7. So they'll either put Morrissey at wing back or Hayes at wing back with the other one at 6. That's how I would predict that they would go with. Diarmaid Burns is too valuable to Limerick out on the right. He's too much of a threat going forward as well. He always sticks over a few points every game. I feel like if he's centre back, it will be harder for him to pull the trigger. And I feel like they might lose a couple of points if they put Diarmaid Burns at centre back. So I would go for Hayes or Morrissey to be there. Aaron Gillán's form as well. Another one, 111 from him. They need to feed him the ball as much as they possibly can. But to wrap up the point, I actually think the fact that Limerick have got out of the Munster Championship after all that, and they're still Munster champions, I think that's going to give them an unshakable confidence going into this game. If they withstood all that and still came out on top, you know, what does it take to bring them down?
That's the thing, all right. And it's if do you think that the stats can actually be taken into account that they have the joint worst defence in the championship out of the 4 teams left and the worst attack? And if you look at Aaron Gillan, 136, Dermot Burns, 116, Seamus Flanagan, 47, Tom Morrissey, 15 points. But when you look at players like Garrett Hagerty, 6 points so far in the Munster Championship, he hasn't hit the heights yet. But we know in the latter stages of the competition, Garrett Hagerty usually steps up to the plate. Cian Lynch, 1 point in the whole championship as well, albeit he's been injured in some games. David Reid, he's got 3, Graham Mulcahy 2, Darrow Donovan with 4, Peter Casey with 4 is a bit surprising as well. So is that a bit of a concern for Limerick, or is it the fact that they came out of Munster, as you said there, against the likes of Cork, Tipperary, Clare, Waterford, with performing so badly and coming out with all them 4 teams and coming out as champions against that Clare team in the final as well. So is that a positive for Limerick, or is it a negative that the players aren't performing as well as they usually have over the last few seasons?
There's an argument that it's negative, and I definitely understand the viewpoint of the argument that it's negative. But I would also throw this out, that there's also another lens you could look at and say that that's actually a positive. Because when I was watching the Tipperary game, here's genuinely what I thought when I was watching the Tipperary game. I was like, they are playing so badly, but also they are so determined. They kept winning the puck outs. And then what was funny was they kept missing the chances. Like Garrod Hegarty spooned one wide where it was like watching somebody tackle Michael Jordan. It was like, whoa, he missed. Like he mishit the ball. Garrod Hegarty mishit the ball. But then again, next puck out, who wins it? Limerick. And it was like, they weren't playing that well. The ball wasn't falling for them. Their shooting was not there, but they were still not giving up. They were still willing to crawl over the line. And I remember watching that game and thinking, do you know what? I saw enough there. Because Tipperary had them on the ropes at one stage. And if ever a team was going to fold, that was the moment to fold. And they didn't. They really gritted their teeth, bit down on the gum shield and said, no, we're not going anywhere. And they clawed out a draw. And that draw is what got them into the Munster final by the grand scheme of things and got them over the line then to win the Munster Championship. And I'm just thinking, that was off the back of a defeat to Clare, where all of a sudden everybody was saying, God, Limerick could actually go out in Munster here. And the whole narrative was swirling around. If off the back of a defeat to Clare, and then losing to a Tipperary team who I think peaked in that game, still didn't take them down, Galway are going to have to pull off something huge to take them down.
It's an interesting point, because I'm going to go on to Galway next. Like, you look at their scores in the team, they have been impressive. Both in the Leinster Championship, they drew against Dublin. They let a lead slip against Kilkenny. That was a terrible lead to give away with that goal from Killian Buckley at the end, and that will trouble Henry Shefflin going into the game. But they still beat Tipperary. They still beat them quite. I know it was a 2-point game, but anybody who looked at the game, it was very, very comprehensive for Galway. And when you look at their scores, Evan Niall with 68 points, which is the top scorer in the whole championship, which is absolutely incredible from him. Brian Kilcannon, 213, as we mentioned, getting that goal that was a rocket in Croke Park last year against Limerick. If he hits the same form, that could be trouble for Limerick. Kevin Cooley with 212. I know this guy's second, but I haven't mentioned him, but I'm going to mention him now. Conor Whelan, 7 goals and 15 points. The one-trick pony himself, very good performance from Conor Whelan so far in the championship. I think Jackie Tyrrell is eating his hat right now. So the Galway still have threats, but you still think Galway have to put in 100% to get over the line. And as a matter of fact, that's the way I think as well.
They have to get everything right. And the performance is right. Dahi Burke has been playing really, really well. He has to have the game of his life. It will be interesting to see if he picks up Aaron Gillan. He has in the past. It'll be very interesting to see, because they have deployed him at 6. It'll be very interesting to see if they move McInerney back out there so that Dahi can go back in and pick up Aaron Gillan, or will they put Gerard McInerney just straight onto Aaron Gillan? Will they put Jack Grealish on them? It's very, very, very hard to know what they're going to do, but the reality is they need a plan for him, because he really, really put Cian Nolan on the back burners at 111 in the Munster final and looked outrageously good. So they need to have a plan for him. Joseph Cooney as well. He needs to go toe-to-toe, in my opinion, with William O'Donoghue. And what battle that will be between the two of them. But because William O'Donoghue is like I heard a phrase once, and it was about Sergio Busquets. And just hear me out on this. I think it was Guardiola talking about Busquets, and he was asked, why is he so important to that Barcelona team? And he said, if you look at the whole game, you don't see Busquets, but if you look at Busquets, you see the whole game. And it was like, he is the guy who gets Limerick their platform in midfield. He dominates every midfield battle he's in. And I said it when I first started the platform on Clare, which obviously was Play on GAA back then. We said it from very early that we always looked at him as the Roy Keane of that team, that he is the manager on the pitch. He's the one who really, really is the hard-nosed fella in midfield who wins every battle for his team. And Joseph Cooney stopping him is so important, because if he wins the midfield battle, that's Limerick getting more quality ball into their forwards, which then Galan can do his stuff. So that battle is crucial. And then going forward as well, as you mentioned, Conor Whelan again has to keep it up, because he will get singled out. He will get someone like Mike Casey put on him. And do you know what? Having seen Casey's performances, he isn't at his best. So there could be a potential joy there for Galway. One thing that they were doing a lot against Dublin, which they have seemed to put right, was they weren't feeding Conor Whelan the ball. I was watching the game, and they were taking pot shots from miles out and missing. And I was like, you've got literally one of the best forwards in the country there, standing in front of the goal, screaming for the ball, and you're not giving it to him. And you're keeping Dublin in the game by doing that. And then in the Kilkenny game and in the Tipperary game, they were giving him the ball. They need to keep that up in this game, and he needs to keep delivering. Kevin Cooney as well needs to have a cracker of a game. Evan Nyland needs to nail every free that he gets. They all need to play at their best. And I would still argue that even if they play at their best, they need Limerick to have an off day, because when Limerick are at their best, they beat everybody.
Yeah, it's a very fair point in general. But you even look at the guys in the middle. If Galway are to win, you'd have to feel Cathal Mannion has to have a good game as well. Excellent player, excellently skilled player. Jason Flynn, I think, is injured for this game. I think he's out for the season. That's a big loss for Galway in general. But final question before predictions in general for Limerick. You mentioned at the start of the show there while we were talking about this game, Declan Hannon at centre-back and Sean Finn at cornerback, both missing for this game and possibly for the season as well. And he mentioned for Declan Hannon that either Dan Morrissey or Kyle Hayes would go in. Would you argue, I think Plus Gaelic put this up on his social media, that Cian Lynch could go into centre-back. Thoughts on that?
It'd be very interesting. Honestly, I don't know enough about Cian Lynch, if he has played at centre halfback before. I don't think he has he?
He has under 21.
He has under 21. See, I'm being honest, I didn't know that. So yeah, that could be an option either. But the fact that Kylie has never done it in a league match, it would be very brave if he did it. If he just whipped it out for an All Ireland semi-final, having never done it before, that would be quite a move. And definitely one that Galway probably wouldn't plan for. So it would be interesting to see if they do it. I would probably lean towards either Hayes or Morrissey, though. But at the same time, if he has played there before, he is one of the most skilled hurlers in the game. He is a tank. Cian Lynch's size is so underestimated. The fella's huge. He could definitely slot in there at 6.
Yeah,
interesting. So. Interesting. I am do you know what? It might not be the worst idea, because he genuinely skill-wise is amazing. And if he's played there before, I genuinely didn't know that before. If he's played there before, could be an option.
Could be in general. Colin Coughlin is another option I heard as well. Youngster.
Yeah, Colin Coughlin's a fantastic hurler. But the fact that he hasn't really been floated to, I wonder, is he 100% fit?
That's an
What?
I was actually hearing as well another option. He named, this is very good for Plus Gaelic actually on his social media page. Follow him if you haven't already. But he named another option. I think he named 2 more. One I definitely remember, Barry Nash. Would you have him there?
Barry Nash is definitely an option, but I think he's too important in the corner. He's the outball. Whenever a team drops a forward into the midfield, they try free up Barry Nash, and that is a real kind of checkmate, if you like, because if you leave Barry Nash free, he'll tear you apart. But if you, do you know what I mean? Like, so I think they probably will keep him in the corner, but I think he definitely could do a job at 6. But no, I think they'll keep him in the corner, and then for the same reason I said that I think they'll keep Jim Burns a right halfback. I think they're too good in their positions to move them around, and I think the last thing Kylie would want to do is to lose one player or two players to injury, and then all of a sudden turn the whole defense around. I think he'll want to keep as much continuity there as he can.
Yeah, that's a very good point, all right. But prediction time in general. I think we're both saying Limerick for this game, but one final question on this. For shot accuracy, what do Galway need to get to in regards to that to win this game? Is it 70? Is it above 80? What do you think?
That's a very hard question to answer. Really hard to actually give a definitive number. But yeah, I feel like they need to take. I'll put it this way. I feel like they need to take every goal chance they get. I feel like they need to get every goal chance that they get. I feel like they need to take them all. Shooting wise, in terms of points, like something high anyway, 70% upwards. Because Limerick are so good. And you've seen how many times have we seen, even over the last couple of years? Yes, this year they've looked more vulnerable. They have looked more vulnerable, and still only one team has beaten them by a point. Do you know what I mean? So they're still that good. So I think Galway have to be that good to beat them.
So you're predicting a Limerick win for this game?
Yeah, I'm predicting a Limerick win. I'm going to go not by too much, probably about 2 or 3 points, but Limerick to win for me. They're out of the woods now in terms of they're out of the Munster Championship. That pressure of having 4 top teams coming for their neck in every game is off them to some extent. And I know that Galway are a top team, but I feel like the fact that Limerick got through all of that in the Munster Championship, where if they're being honest with themselves, they can look in the mirror and say, we didn't play our best, and we still got out with the Munster Championship as champions. That's going to give them bulletproof confidence going into this game. And I think that, I honestly think that they can't be stopped from now to the end of the year.
Yeah, I probably predict Limerick. Same mark as you, to be honest. Like, Galway will put up a fight like they did last year, but Limerick should have way too much. And the question is, if Limerick make it through, will it be a repeat of last year's final? Will Kilkenny join Limerick at the final? We'll have to see on Sunday, as Kilkenny take on Clare on Sunday, obviously at 4 p.m. in Croke Park, live on RT2 and BBC 2 Northern Ireland night. The last game. This is interesting because Kilkenny really wiped the floor with Clare last year, and nobody expected that. But when you look at this year, maybe Clare are a year wiser, a year older. That's maybe at the back of their minds as well. And Clare have had this potential throughout the championship this season. But Kilkenny, they still have the players like the likes of O'Cody, Mossy Keown if he's fit, TJ Reid. I don't know, is Adrian Mullen going to be fit for this game? If he is, that's absolutely crucial for Kilkenny. But it's a very interesting game. And I've heard for Clare, at the Clare side of things, that Conor Cleary isn't fit for this game, and that's going to be massive in this. Shane Murray is apparently going to go into that full back spot instead of Cian Nolan, obviously, who had really bad day against Limerick the last day. So, like, huge injury news on both sides as of now. Like, it's going to be a tight game either way, though.
Oh, like, this is. I think when you're previewing this game, I think the first thing we have to look at is it's going to be a cracker of a game, in my opinion. But the first thing you have to look at is what happened last year. Like, what do we think happened last year? Because you're right, nobody saw that coming. Like, people did see Kilkenny winning coming. Nobody saw a one-sided beatdown coming. We all thought it was going to be a cracker of a game, and it just wasn't. Kilkenny just dominated. So the first thing you have to look at is what happened last year. Were Clare out of steam? Did Clare underestimate Kilkenny? Did Kilkenny just have their number? Is it all of those things? Like, and then the other thing is as well, like, well, I'll throw that to you first. Like, if you had to kind of put it down, is it all of the above, or is it one thing in particular that you think happened?
Looking back at some videos and previews for this game, I think it was one particular thing, and I completely forgot about this before even seeing those videos. and it was John Conlon's absence. He had back spasms before the game. He's the linchpin in that Clare team in the centre back role. He was missing in that. He's fit for this game.
He got absolutely tanked against Dublin. Danny Sutcliffe jumped into his head.
But he's fit for this game, apparently. That's what I'm hearing anyway. So if he is fit, that's vital for Clare, and it could be the platform to get Clare over the line.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that also would have played into it. But in more just the general performances, a lot of Clare players didn't play well. Like Tony Kelly didn't have a good game. Mikey Butler dominated him, and that led to Mikey Butler getting Young Hurler of the Year. Yeah, like it was weird. Other injuries that they have this year, Conor Cleary, as you mentioned, gone. John Conlon, yeah, he's listed to start, but is he still a bit shook up after that bang? Like that was an awful injury. Like he got up, he didn't know where he was. Does he still have a bit of a concussion or something? Like we don't know, because this is the type of game that if John Conlon is even 60% fit, they'll play him, because they can't risk what happened last year happening again. David McInerney, he didn't play against Dublin. What's his fitness like? Shane O'Donnell, he went off against Dublin. What's his fitness like? Aidan McCarthy as well didn't play against Dublin. Is he going to be back? Like there are question marks about more than just Cleary for Clare. And even if they playing is one thing, being 100% fit is another. So that's something else that they have to take into account.
Yeah, I'm just reading an article that was sent on to me last night by a Clare fan here, saying that centre-back John Conlon was obviously shook up after the Dublin game, but he's set to join David McInerney in the half-back line for this game. So McInerney, according to that article, is fit, but Conor Cleary definitely isn't fit. But that's a key thing for them. Another thing last season, and I remember this from my stats, 24 wides last season. They can't hit that number again if they want to beat Kilkenny this year.
No, absolutely not, because Kilkenny are clinical. Like Kilkenny don't tend to hit a huge amount of wides. Like you look at TJ Reid, barely ever misses a free. They need to be clinical with that. Like look, here's the other thing as well, is that I give them a damn good chance in this game, because the other thing that we have to talk about when we switch over to Kilkenny is it's not Brian Cody's team anymore. Like Derek Ling, it's Derek Ling's team. And one of the key things is that what I hate kind of results-based analysis, because everybody then was, Lord and Derek Ling's having the best, start to his Kilkenny career ever. Yeah, he's had a very good start, but like if Pádraig Mannion has his hurl there, he clears that ball, Galway are Leinster champions. Kilkenny go then into play Tipperary in the All Ireland Quarter Final. Would they have got through that? Okay, let's say that they did. Then they would have been up against Limerick in the other semi-final. And there would have been question marks over the Kilkenny team the same way there's question marks over the Galway team. And that's why this is interesting to look at, because it's Derek Ling's Kilkenny. He has made changes. He has put his own stamp on the team. He has, gone with different players, the likes of Billy Drennan, the likes of David Blanchfield have got more game time. It is his team. And that's why this is going to be very interesting to see how they perform going into this game. And one player that I am very interested to see what type of role he plays is Walter Walsh. Like when he came on against Galway, he had a cracking performance in the second half. He was really, really good. And I was watching that thinking, like, Walter Walsh, like if you ever see Walter Walsh in person, he is huge. And it's like, when you're standing there, you're kind of thinking, who's taking the ball off this fella? And against Galway, it looked like he was on it. And let's not forget, when he came on against Limerick in the All-Ireland hurling semi-final in 2019, he changed the game. Yeah. So his performance, I think, will be very interesting. If I had to pick, I think they'll probably keep him on the bench and spring him in the 40th minute. But I'd be very interested to see what role he plays, because he was awesome in the Leinster final.
Another thing in Kilkenny, look at their scoring stats in general. Fourth of the scoring charts, in particular, Adrian Mullen, 13 points. Is it crucial that he's fit for Kilkenny?
Yes. Yes. He's a fabulous hurler. And you look at where he's able to pick scores off from midfield, on the sideline. He's a constant threat no matter where he is in the field. So getting him back, not even just for this game, but for the bigger picture, if they can get through this game to the final, Mullen is the guy that they need to have, in my opinion, to have every chance of winning.
Mossy Keown as well, 5 goals and 9 points. He seems to always score goals and not necessarily points, but he's a goal getter for Kilkenny. And when you look at their goal scoring in this championship, they've only scored goals in half their games, albeit in those games they've scored goals. They've scored 5 against Antrim, 5 against Wexford, and 4 against Galway, and they've scored none in the other 3. That's an amazing stat in general. So, like, if Mossy Keown plays in this game, Kilkenny are a goal threat.
Yeah, and the other thing that you haven't mentioned as well is that Keoghan strikes at crucial times. Like Keoghan hits when the iron's hot. Like he strikes when the iron's hot. His goal against Galway in the first half of the Leinster final was crucial because it kept Kilkenny in the game at a time when they weren't performing. That being said as well, his goal against Clare last year in the All Ireland Hurling semi-final, that really was, yeah, we're parting ways here. This is going to be a beatdown. When Keoghan stuck that ball in the net, that was a real like, okay, now Kilkenny are really destroying them. So it's not even just the goal, it's the time that he strikes. He always seems to strike at an important stage. So I think he will be really, really interesting to see who he's picked up by. I could see him being picked up by someone like Shane Amori. I can see Maury potentially picking him up. It's really, really, really interesting. I think this one is harder to call than the Limerick Galway. Without any disrespect to Galway, I just think Limerick are just that good. But this one is really hard to call because I think, being completely honest, and I don't want to sound in any way bad to either team, I think Clare's ceiling is a bit higher. I think in terms of the level that Clare can reach, their ceiling is a little bit higher than Kilkenny's. But I think Kilkenny are more consistent. I think every week you're getting at least an 8 out of 10 out of Kilkenny. Whereas some weeks with Clare you can get a 10 out of 10, some weeks you can get a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. And just on Clare, before we get into the predictions, like Tony Kelly scored 5 goals and 32 points, high up in the scoring charts in general. Aidan McCarthy, 127. I don't know, is he going to be fit for this game? It's going to be crucial as well. Mark Rogers is an interesting one, 4 goals and 17 points. He took the freeze the last game against Dublin, and what I was hearing anyway, he was much better than Aidan McCarthy and Tony Kelly on the freeze. So, question to you, should Mark Rogers take the freeze in this game?
Yeah. I think he looked very, very assured on them against Dublin. Like I was doing a live stream for that game as well. It was my first time doing a live stream for a hurling match. It was not a particularly nice debut on that field, watching my team get stuffed. But Rogers was very assured on the freeze, and I think it takes a bit of a weight off Tony Kelly's shoulders. I think sometimes he feels like he's doing it all by himself, and when Clare lose and Tony Kelly has something like a goal and 14 points to his name or something, I feel like by taking the freeze off him, and then at the same time the narrative is as well as I do remember Kelly having a few games where he was missing a few frees, and then very quickly when you're that good as a player, people do look for things to kind of hit you with. And I remember some people saying, oh, Tony Kelly can't take frees and that type of thing. So I think by taking him off the freeze, I think that is a good move. Because remember last year when it was Tony Kelly taking them and then Peter Duggan was put on them and then Aidan McCarthy was put on them. Like, I think by putting Rogers on them and saying, look, Rogers is our guy to take the freeze, I think that takes a bit of a weight off his shoulders.
Definitely so. And there's so many narratives to this game, and it probably is a much harder prediction than the Limerick Galway game. Who are you saying will win this game? Can Clare get revenge for last season, or can Kilkenny repeat the trick and potentially provide a repeat All Ireland final as last season?
I'm going to go with what I went with on my own predictions this morning. I did recordings for my predictions on the games. I said Clare just about. And it's so hard to really nail down why. Like, these teams are so evenly matched. Like, as I said, I do genuinely believe the Kilkenny are more consistent, but there is also a part of me that just has this feeling that the rivalry between Limerick and Clare, how fitting would it be if the two of them met in an All-Ireland hurling final? Like, what a game that would be if the two of them met in an All-Ireland hurling final. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but would that be the first time that Clare and Limerick ever played in an All-Ireland hurling final?
I believe so, yeah.
Because 1997 was when the back door was brought in. And since then, they haven't played each other in an All-Ireland hurling final.
Yeah.
Because I know Limerick didn't get to one apart from 2007. They got to one in 07. They got to one in 2018, obviously then. And the last one before 2007, I believe, was 1996 when they lost to Wexford. So they definitely didn't play Clare then. Clare's only final was Kilkenny in 02 and then Cork in 2013. So what an occasion it would be if the two of them met in the final.
It will be a brilliant occasion as well. And I'd agree with you. I'm going to go for Clare.
And if Clare, sorry, just last one. If Clare of all teams were the team to stop Limerick doing the 4 in a row,
that would be amazing, really, if Clare did it. And they look, it's kind of a situation, though. I know where you think you head and stuff like that before the semi-finals have even kicked off this weekend, but Clare beat Limerick already this season. Do you think Limerick will have fired the belly? I know they beat them in the Munster final, but for Limerick to get 2 above Clare, it would kind of just wipe out that game in the Gaelic grounds early on. I think it was in April sometime. So, look, there's a lot of narratives in a potential, and I'll stress this potential All Ireland final.
Yeah, and that's why it would be a cracker. And look, being completely honest, I'm just saying this. If I was a Limerick hurler, I would want Clare in the final. We've already beaten Kilkenny in last year's final. We've been there, done that. I want Clare in the final now. I want as many different challenges so that we can say at the end of it all, we are the greatest. We beat every team in the final that you could beat.
Yeah, that's definitely the way in general. Even though that Kilkenny team beat Cork, Limerick, Waterford, and Tip in space of 4 years, so you could argue. And we're not going into arguing with the greatest teams of all time. Like, it's a lengthy debate, but we will get onto that once we know who the All Ireland champions are. Will it be Limerick? Will it be Clare? Or even Kilkenny and Galway if they make it? But we're predicting a Clare and Limerick final here on the podcast. And before we go, we'll go over the other 3 games. Just briefly, we'll go over the Camogie Quarter Finals, the first of the Camogie Quarter Finals. Tipperary against Antrim, 3:30, live on RT2 from Croke Park. This is a part of the doubleheader with Limerick and Galway, which we said at the start of the show, and that's a brilliant for them. When you look at Tipperary's scores, caught the van 5 goals and 19 points in the whole championship. That's Munster and All Ireland series in general. Emer McGrath 26 points, Emer Heffernan with 2-6, Roisin Howard with 3-5, which is pretty impressive. Antrim, I think they were Ulster champions, or was down Ulster champions early on in the year, but they did well in the group stage. They went through to the quarterfinals with a game to spare, obviously getting hammered by Waterford in the last game, 5-16 to 10 points. But Katrine Dobbins done well with 220. Roisin McCormick has done well with 23 points. Andy McGill with 1-8. And that's without Maeve Kelly, who I think is a very good camogie player for Antrim over the last few seasons. So it's an interesting game, but in general, Tipperary, Munster champions, they got over Waterford, who beat Cork in the Munster Championship. It was kind of unusual for Tipperary to win that. And then they drew against Kilkenny last weekend. So you have the feeling this Tipperary team is serious. But Antrim, they've done well to get this far.
Yeah, sure. Me and you were talking about this. We were saying, at the start of the season, we were saying if we were to pick any team to break into the top 3 of Camogie, the Cork, Kilkenny, Galway triangle, we pick Tipperary or Waterford. And look, this is what the reality is. Tipperary this season have shown serious signs they're going to continue that. Munster champions, then obviously drawing with Kilkenny away in Nolan Park. And the biggest thing to look at in that game is they should have won that game. They were 3 points up in the second half. They'd held Kilkenny scoreless for 17 minutes. Mairead Eviston did such a good job on Denise Gall. And then they just let Kilkenny back into the game. And I think they walked out of there thinking we've really left that one behind us, because they are striving to break into the top 3. And I think they have a huge opportunity to do it this year. You look at it the other side, that the fact that Kilkenny are playing Cork and one of them is going to be gone. Like, they have a really good chance to break into that top 3 this year. And you look at some of the other results, the fact like they beat Dublin 219 to 1-6, they beat Wexford 315 to 12 points. Like, they're really impressive victories, considering that now they're getting to the stage where they're too good for Dublin. They're too good for Wexford. They're too good for teams that aren't to the level of that. And you could say maybe instead of a top 3 now, we're looking at a top 5 with Tip and Waterford just below maybe the top 3 right now. But having seen that, they really, really made Kilkenny look ordinary for long stages. That was really, really impressed with them. But also, I think that they would want to, I think that they would feel like they left that game behind them. Antrim, on the other hand, great victory over Limerick, great victory over Offaly into the quarterfinals, and then they just got schooled against Waterford away from home. They were really, really taken to the cleaners in that game. Look, they have some fabulous hurlers, the likes of Roisin McCormack, is a player that I really, really like. I don't know what's the story with Derva Cosgrove this year. Is she around the panel?
She was in the junior panel last year. I'm not sure if she could have made the senior panel. That's Antwerp B team, by the way, that won the junior season. So I don't know what she called up.
She was one that I kept an eye on at the start of the year. It's just that I remember seeing her score 4 goals in the junior final last season, and thinking there's no way that she doesn't get called up. And so I was just interested to see, will she get a run out in this game? Because if you're talking goal threat, I mean, 4 goals in one game is definitely a way to stick your hand up and say that you can be someone to supply it. But definitely Roisin McCormack is the main threat, I think, the Tipperary have to look at. And when you look at the job that Mairead Eviston did on Denise Gall, I think they might have the answer to it. Unfortunately for Antrim, I am going to go for a Tipperary victory.
Yeah, I am as well. I'm going to go for a Tipperary win as well. And to win Munster as well by hammering Waterford. Let's not forget the Munster champion, hammering Clare as well. And this was a Waterford team that beat Cork. So, like, Tipperary, they're a team coming definitely, and they're doing a very good job. In fairness, like Caught Devan is still doing well. Emer McGrath as well. I'm not sure Emer McGrath, she's from Lockmore Castletown. Is she related to Liam and Noel? I'm not sure. No, I think
John.
she's. And John? She has to be, surely.
It could be, yeah. I mean, McGrath is a very common second name across Ireland, isn't it? But you wouldn't put it past, especially if she's Lockmore Castletown. Yeah, that's such a small club, like in terms of area. So probably is.
Definitely.
And for a small club as well, look, I didn't mean that in like a disrespectful way at all. Like I think in terms of for the size that they have in terms of land mass population, the players that they've churned out is ridiculous. Like even past the McGraths being the obvious ones, you've got the likes of Kieran Connolly, like who's a cracking player, like who I thought he'd be strolling straight into the Tipperary team and probably will over the next few seasons. But yeah, like I meant it more in that way.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we're both predicting a Tipperary win, but we could both agree Antrim have had a very good year, in fairness, and have been well done to Antrim, obviously, if they lose this game. But this game now in the Camogie Quarter Finals, live in RT2 on Sunday at 1:30, is a cracker. Cork against Kilkenny, a repeat of last year's All Ireland final, and you know how tight these two sides are. But what I was wondering about Kilkenny in the All Ireland series in general, drew 2 and won 1. Well, Cork have won 2 and lost 1. Obviously, the one they lost was to Galway. But what I was hearing from Matthew Toomey, who we interview usually on the Southern Star, and we have our chats and stuff like that, he was actually saying to me that they had actually more chances at Galway in that game. It should have finished the chances, and they had a load of wide. So, like Cork did struggle for parts of the championship, but them 2 wins against Down and Clare kind of put them back on the pedestal. Whereas Kilkenny, you have to feel they're kind of struggling. Drew against Wexford, drew against Tipperary. I know they beat Dublin quite comprehensively in their game, but albeit form goes out the window in this game because this is a cracker between 2 of the All Ireland favourites.
Yeah, as I said, this is 2 of the top 3, and correct me if I'm wrong. These were last year's All Ireland Camogie final.
It was,
correct. Yeah, so I keep getting mixed up because I know every year it's Galway, Cork, or Kilkenny that face each other in the Camogie final. But yeah, so for these two to meet at the All Ireland quarterfinal stage is huge because it's a real like, okay, well, something has gone wrong for both of you to be meeting at this stage. Cork losing to Galway, yeah, like they had their chances in that game to win it, but then the way that their forwards clicked into the gear against Down and against Clare was hugely impressive. 319 to 110 against Down, 319 to 8 points against Clare away at Cusack Park in Ennis. You can't ignore that scoreline. When you've got the likes of Lorna McNamara and Evo D, and they hold them to 8 points, like that's ridiculous. Like that's so tight at the back. Then going forward, you've got the likes of Fiona Keating, you've got the likes of Amy O'Connor, and then also, I mean, me and you have talked about the dual players problem. This is the first weekend in a while where they don't have that issue.
Yeah, exactly.
And how crucial could that be? I know Orla Cahalan picked up an injury, but you still have the likes of Libby Coppinger. You still have the likes of, the name is Hannah Looney. You still have these coming back in now that can just give their full attention to Camogie for the weekend. And that could be crucial.
It could be, especially Libby is such a very good fullback in general. And you feel like, I know Mairead Evanston, as you mentioned there, did a good job at Denise Gall, but Libby Coppinger, you feel, could do a good job at Denise Gall as well. Or Maeve Callahan is another good defender as well. So, like, Cork have good defenders to deal with the Kilkenny forwards. And as I mentioned, Denise Gall's done well. Aoife Prendergast's done well. I think Aoife Dodd's coming back to the team, who's a live wire up at the forward line as well. So, Cork do have the defenders to deal with Kilkenny in general. And do you think that'll be the aspect that gets them over the line?
Yeah, I think that was crucial. But on top of that, I think their forwards is probably what I would tip them to get over the line, because I actually am, like, to answer the prediction question, I have tipped Cork to narrowly win this game. I just think the fact that they have these girls back now, just focused on the Camogie this weekend, instead of them being focused on football and then driving themselves to the next game like Libby Coppinger did. The fact that they can just focus on this is huge. The fact that they have the likes of Amy O'Connor, Fiona Keating, they can cause the Kilkenny defence such problems. And yeah, like Kilkenny, the fact is, like, Kilkenny should have been beaten by Tipperary. They were extremely lucky to get out of there with a draw. Like, they were held scoreless for 17 minutes. If they're held scoreless for 17 minutes against this Cork side, Cork are putting them to the sword. Like, just looking at this, Kilkenny 1-17, 3-14 and 2-8. That's what they've scored. Cork have scored 12 points, 3-19 and 3-19. Cork's forward line has hit more. So if Kilkenny go scoreless for 17 minutes, Cork will leave them for dust. And that's what I just think. I don't think Kilkenny look as sharp as they did last year. Could live to regret saying that. But I just think you look at the form, you look at how Denise Gall was held by Mairead Evanston. I don't know what is Miriam Walsh fully fit?
No, she's not.
No, like, that's a massive blow. So they don't look like the same team that they did last year right now, and I will go for Cork to take them out.
And as well as that, Kilkenny drew against a Wexford team that lost to Dublin at the weekend as well. So
there you go. Beating Dublin as well, like, they've had a bit of a psychological grip over Dublin over the last few years, where we can't seem to put 2 and 2 together against them. So I wasn't stunned when they did it again, but to draw with Wexford, I was surprised at that. Even though Wexford was showing promise. That was at home,
Yeah. So, I don't want to say it because I don't want to put the Cork Camogie players under pressure, because I am a Cork fan, obviously, and I want them to do well. But you can't argue against the facts and all that. And the fact Libby Coppinger or the Callahan's back now, she recovered from an ankle injury and did well, I think, in the LGFA at the weekend. So she's back fully fit. Hannah Looney, obviously, and Aoife Healy as well. Amy O'Connor's back to full fitness. And big news as well, Matches who were revealed to me during the week. Aisling Thompson's back at the panel, and so is Laura Tracy.
That's a game changer.
Laura Hayes, I think it was, but both Lauras are now back in the panel, Laura Hayes and Laura Tracy. But Aisling Thompson, that's a game changer for Cork. Later on in the season, not just this game.
She's just class. She's class there. Yeah, like Camogie winning captain. Like, that's a game changer that she's back.
Yeah. She might not start though, but she's definitely on the bench.
What a weapon to have on the bench.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing as well, is that the fact that she's back, Kilkenny now have to think about her.
Yeah.
Like, they have to have a plan for her. They have to have somebody ready to go on and mark her. They have to have somebody who's thinking Aisling Thompson's going to come on. And I tell you what, it'll be very interesting to hear the roar when she comes on. A Camogie winning captain. I like as well that they did a double header. I like that they have Kilkenny, Clare straight after. Not like the booking of earlier in the season when they put Derry and Kildare at the same time in 2 different parts of the country. Actually learned something.
Yeah, they have, definitely. But one more question before we get into the minor final. Cork have lost, I think it's about 5 or 6 of the last games against either Galway or Kilkenny. Is that good of a factor in general that Cork can't get over the line? And if they win this weekend, will they put that mental thoughts behind them?
I think it was more an issue, like me and you were talking about. I think it was more an issue with getting over the line in the final.
Yeah.
Possibly. And look, it was against those teams. So could you argue that maybe because we're in a quarter final now that it won't necessarily apply as much? Potentially. Maybe, but
Yeah.
then like we will see. And the reality is that when it is the same team over and over again that is denying you getting over the line, no doubt it's going to play a bit of a on your minds. But the fact that you're bringing back in the likes of Ashland Thompson, who've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, like they can provide invaluable experience of what it was like to get over the line in those finals.
Yeah, exactly. So we're predicting Cork and Tipperary to get over the line to join Waterford and Galway in the Camogie semi-finals. Who do you think will win it all outright? Will it be Galway or Cork again, or could Tipperary pull off a surprise?
I think honestly, it's so early to call. I think this weekend will tell me a lot. I think if Tipperary smoke Antrim and if Cork beat Kilkenny hands down, if Cork beat Kilkenny easy, I'd be definitely tipping Cork.
Interesting prediction. And I'd probably go Galway for now, but we'll have to see over the next few weeks how it progresses. And before we leave the podcast here, we'll go on to the minor football championship final. Monaghan against Derry at 1 o'clock on Sunday, live at TG Cards and the Boxes Athletic Grounds. And Ulster Derby, coincidentally, both sides have played each other twice at the championship already. The first meeting in the group stage in Ulster ended Derry 114, Monaghan 6 points. And then the Ulster Championship, it ended 115 to 3-9. The game went to penalties and Derry won that. So will it be third time lucky for Monaghan in this game? When you look at Monaghan, they've the top score overall in Max McGuinnessy with 3 goals and 44 points. They've the top score for play in Matthew Finn with 3 goals and 18 points. Their attack is smoking hot, Monaghan, and they haven't won a minor championship in their history. This is their first minor final since 1939. So they'll be up for this game. But on the other side, Derry, they've only averaged a concession rate of 6 points a game. This Derry team is very like the senior team. They're very defensive. They sit in tight. And they've conceded totals like 3 points against Down, 6 points against Monaghan the first day out, obviously, 6 points against Donegal, 2 points against Fermanagh, a solitary point against Antrim, 4 points against Donegal, 4 points against Galway. They've only conceded 4 goals in this campaign, but 3 of those goals were against Monaghan in the Ulster Championship. So a lot of variables around this game, and it's going to be very interesting. Derry haven't won a minor title since 2020. Monaghan are going for their first ever.
Yeah, I mean that just sounds like the most exhilarating style of football of all time, doesn't it? But you put that thing back up actually as well. I was saying I was looking forward to the Finzel.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No. But yeah, no, I'm only messing. But that game, like the concession rate there is ridiculous, and it's like as if Derry don't already have enough class defenders like Chrissy McCaig, Garrett McKinless, Owen McAvoy, Conor McCluskey, and now you're bringing in lads that have just swallowed up the best attacks in the Ulster Minor Championship. So it's hard to see how anybody will get on against them, holding a very talented Dublin side to 1-8 as well. Like, it's really hard to see how Monaghan can go toe-to-toe with these. But then again, they did. In the Ulster final, look, Derry won it on penalties, 4-2. And Monaghan did go toe-to-toe with them that day. Will Derry let them score as much again? Like, their track record says no. I would Monaghan, what an achievement it would be if they won the All Ireland minor title for the first time ever. And I think everybody, the fact that Derry have won it in 2020, no disrespect, but I feel like every neutral will be rooting for Monaghan in this game to make history. But when you look at them as well, like they have racked up huge scores themselves, like 317 on Down, 312 on Fermanagh, 219 on Tyrone. Like they have put up big scores. You cannot deny that. And beating Kerry in the All Ireland semi-final, what confidence is that going to give them? So it's very, very interesting to see this final. And it's a battle of heart and head. I'm saying that like the stats point to that Derry's defense is probably going to be too strong, but then my heart is saying Monaghan are going to make history.
It's an interesting one, definitely. And it is going to be very, very interesting indeed. And just as a bit of context around the Tyrone game, Seamus mentioned they scored 319 against Tyrone. That Tyrone team scored, I think it was 818 or something like that against Antrim one day. I think I remember that scoreline and looking at it like, what on earth is this? Like, arguably, actually, the top 3 sides in the minor championship this year have come from Ulster: Monaghan, Derry, and Tyrone.
Mm-hmm.
So is football best in Ulster at the moment? I know we'll get on to our predictions outright in a minute, but is Ulster, the kingpin of football at the moment?
They have to win the All Ireland to make that happen.
Well, they are on
Uh,
Sunday.
what?
They are on
Oh
Sunday.
no! But as in like at senior level, if we're talking about them as the kingpins for the entire game, yeah, like obviously someone from Ulster is going to win the All Ireland minor title this weekend. But yeah, no, definitely for the future, it's good omens. Yeah, for Ulster counties, you look at it, Tyrone, which have a wave of talent coming into their team as well. Armagh have looking like they're getting a lot stronger as well. Like you've still got so many prospects breaking into the Armagh side there. Oisin Kanati, players like that. Keane McConville, another one that I can't wait to see where he goes with this Armagh side. And then you've got Monaghan, Derry flourishing, like just pulling out incredible teams. And it'll be very, very interesting to see this final. I hope Derry open up a little bit more. I hope that they go for a little bit more. I hope they don't try and starve Monaghan. But like, haven't seen their scorelines. They probably will go with what has got them this far. And yeah, I see a cagey game. But you know what? I'll go for Monaghan. I'll go for Monaghan to make history.
I'm going to go for the same. I'm going to go for Monaghan. I think Max McGinnity and Matthew Finn are two excellent forwards by the looks of things. Very skillful. And it'll just be a fairy tale story if they go on and win it. Before we leave this game as well, a bit of a stat for you. Not since 2014 has the minor semi-finalists matched the senior semi-finalists county for county. When you look at the senior semi-finalists, Monaghan, Derry, Dublin, Kerry. Same in the minor. It's incredible, really, Seamus. Are they the 14 pins at the moment?
That is mental when you put it like that. That is mad. That was like one of the unexplainables. Like, do you remember 100 years after the 1920 championship, that the 2020 championship, we ended up with the exact same four semi-finalists, and it was like, imagine showing somebody from back then like a little window into the future, and they think that the game hadn't changed in 100 years. What, the same lads are back at the table again? Um, but yeah, just remarkable, really, that has happened. Look, in terms of kingpins, like it's hard to put a label on a group of teams and say that they're the kingpins because it changes year on year. Teams get stronger, teams get weaker. Teams get stronger, teams get weaker. And but right now, for this year anyway, yeah, they are, because they've made it to the final four in both the minor and the senior. You know, obviously, we're ignoring the under 20 level for that, where Kildare and Sligo were the ones that got to the final. But yeah, very, very interesting anyway.
Very interesting indeed.
Oh
In
yeah,
fairness,
sorry.
but
So last one for pointing out coincidences. If Kerry get beaten by Derry, they will have gone out in the semi-final in the under 20, the senior, and the minor. So no pressure, lads.
yeah, bit of an omen there. There's a lot of omens actually suggesting that Monaghan and Derry. I know it seems unlikely, but a lot of omens are saying that Monaghan and Derry could do it. I know this is next week now, but a lot of omens are saying it because in the minor final, Monaghan and Derry beat Dublin and Kerry. And when you look at the Champions League winners in English terms as well, all but 1 year where there's been an English Champions League winner since 2005, an Ulster All Ireland champion. The only outlier was Liverpool in 2019 and Dublin in 2019. So historically, Ulster counties do it because in 2021, Chelsea won the Champions League, Tyrone won the All Ireland. 2008, Man United won the Champions League, Tyrone won the All Ireland. 2012, Chelsea won the Champions League, Donegal won the All Ireland. There's a lot of omens saying a Monaghan Derry final, Seamus.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, and you know what? If they happen, maybe I'll start to believe in them. Maybe I'll start to believe in omens. It's one of those things that I'm not 100% sure I believe in. They're cool, but like, as in, if there's some mystical force making something happen, I'm not so sure I believe that. But yeah, very interesting. Like the most obvious one when you're talking about curses is the Mayo curse, but like I don't believe that there's a curse.
Yeah, you still don't believe there's a curse, and it actually proved last Sunday that there's no curse.
Yeah, I if I had to put it down to anything, I'd say that they've just been very unlucky that they've always come up against cracking teams. Like Mayo, I think of all of them, like this is completely sidetracked debate, but like they chose to have their best ever team at the same time that the greatest team in Gaelic football history was around. Like, if that's any other era, that Mayo team wins back-to-back All Irelands.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so.
Like that's kind of it. And I also think as well that in key moments, I think they just lost their head. You think Donald Vaughan getting sent off in 2017, Ryan O'Donoghue missing the penalty. I think they've just had moments where like they feel the pressure of, God, we need to win one so badly that they just crumble under the pressure of that moment.
Yeah, exactly so. And I'd say a difficult one to take for Mayo fans, and they'd have to think about next year in general. But that has been the wrap of the 5 games this weekend. Leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow the podcast on Spotify, follow Gaelic Statsman on social media and all that. And of course, follow Seamus's page on Clare on YouTube, subscribe to his channel. Follow all the social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all them accounts right there as well. And enjoy the games this weekend. And thanks for anybody that viewed the podcast as well this week. And thanks, Seamus, for coming on today and enjoying the games this weekend.
Not about it. Thanks, Matthew.